Welcome to Immigration Talk with Attorney Anish. Attorney Anish is an immigration lawyer who has been certified as a specialist in immigration and nationality law by the State Bar of California's Board of Legal Specialization.
April 4th, 2020. My name is Anish Vashista of the law firm of Anish Vashista. This is my second video on trying to provide some tips and ideas to individuals and companies who are trying to navigate U.S. immigration law during the COVID-19 crisis. Yesterday's video was about how one can look up their USCIS case status and what they can do if the case is pending beyond the normal processing time. Today, I wanted to talk about the various federal agencies that are involved in U.S. immigration and what their operations are like during the COVID-19 crisis. This is very important because a number of law offices are closed during the crisis. Now, while my office continues to be open and operating, including making filings, responding to notices, meeting deadlines, not every law office is open right now. So I wanted to give some tips to individuals who are trying to do all this on their own individually, whether on behalf of themselves, a family member, an employer, or a company. So without further ado, let's get to the agencies. The first one I wanted to talk about was United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. If you just go to their website, USCIS.gov, you'll see that they have a number of different pieces of information regarding the COVID-19 crisis, especially if you click on their link about it. And USCIS, for the most part, all in-person services are going to be shut down until up through May 3rd. And they go into really a lot of detail on their website, especially on their webpage, about the response to the COVID-19 crisis. All field offices for appointments are going to be rescheduled. All appointments at the field offices are going to be rescheduled. So if you've been scheduled for an appointment in April, it's going to be rescheduled. It's not going to happen. There are some emergency services that are provided, but you'd have to contact USCIS directly for that. Same thing applies for the fingerprinting and biometrics appointments. They're not going to happen in April. So you'll be rescheduled. They tell you that if you don't get the rescheduling of the appointment by mail within 90 days, then you got to call the 1-800 number. Asylum appointments, not going to happen in April. So you can see that they have a lot of detailed information about their office closures. They also did a couple of things regarding notices. So if a notice, such as a request for evidence, a notice of intent to deny, and in some cases even a denial decision, was issued on or after March 1st, and going all the way to May 1st, you're for the most part going to get a 60-day extension. Now, it's very important that you read the notice carefully because a lot of the newer notices that are coming out already include those 60 days. So if you got a notice of intent to deny, for example, and you see that you have a 90-day deadline, well, the normal deadline for that is 30 days. So that means if they gave you 90 days, they're already adding 60 days to it. So it doesn't mean that you can add 60 days to the 190. It doesn't mean you get 150 days or 5 months to respond to a notice of intent to deny. That's very important to understand. If you're not quite understanding how much time you have, it's good to reach out to someone who does understand how it works. Also, what they said about denials is that if you got a denial, and I'll open that part first before I get to work permits. If you had a denial that was dated on or after March 1st and going all the way to May 1st of this year, you get another 60 days to file your Form I-290B, which is normally what's filed for a motion or an appeal. However, they're very clear that it doesn't apply to everyone. So it's only from an appealable decision with AAO jurisdiction. AAO is the Administrative Appeals Office. Why is that important? Because, for example, some filings are not appealable, such as an I-485, which is an application to adjust status. That is not appealable. And based on USCIS's information on their website, if you had a denial of an I-485 and you have 30 days or 33 days if the decision is mailed to file a motion to reopen, then under this guidance, you do not have the extra 60 days. You do not get 90 days or 93 days if it was mailed. So it's very important to understand. Again, if you're confused about it, reach out to someone who does understand, such as an immigration attorney. Going back, we can look at employment authorization documents. This is very nice of USCIS. They're saying that although their ASCs, which is their application support centers, which conduct the fingerprinting and biometrics appointments, although they're closed, they're still going to continue adjudicating the work permit applications, trying to use whatever they have already on file regarding the biometrics. Naturalization oath ceremony is not going to happen in April. Very important to understand. If you feel sick, don't go to the USCIS appointment. even after it's rescheduled. And then special situations, if you have a special situation, they even have a page on special situations and what can be done. So it's very important to go to their website because they actually have a very good website. Next, I want to go to United States Customs and Border Protection, which is also a part of the Department of Homeland Security, like USCIS. Now, when it comes to when it comes to Customs and Border Protection, it's not always easy to find all the information on their website. So if I go back, if I went to cbp.gov, and then I had to go through their website to find out what their COVID-19 crisis was. But fortunately, they do have information right at the top of their website. And you'll see that they have a CBP COVID-19 updates and announcements. And then they also have very specific information. But what I wanted to look at was the travel announcements and advisories. So this is very important for people who are outside the United States who want to enter the U.S. or people who are in the U.S. planning to travel outside the U.S. and wanting to figure out how they're going to be able to come back. So they list their media releases talking about the agreements with Canada and Mexico on closing the border for non-essential purposes. And they also have information on protecting air travelers, and they also have a notice on arrival restrictions for people coming from China, Iran, and certain countries of Europe. I wanted to focus on all air travelers. If you have a very particular concern about the European countries listed below, China and Iran, then it's very important that you look up the very specific information for people coming in from those countries. But on their website, CBP has, for protecting air travelers and the American public, they have information about how the acting secretary of DHS issued restrictions on March 13th, outlining the process for American citizens, legal permanent residents, and their immediate families who are returning home after recently visiting certain European countries listed below, China and Iran. Effective for flights taking off on Friday, March 16th, Americans returning from all restricted countries will now be required to travel through the following 13 airports. So if you're coming from one of those countries that are listed below, and they're actually not listed below, so that is concerning. Oh, they do have them here. So we have China, Iran, and of course these European countries, which they have here: Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia. So you have to search for it, but it's there, and it goes on. It's a number of countries in Europe, including the United Kingdom. So it's important to know that if you're coming back from those countries, you can only fly to one of these 13 airports. You may not be able to go to the exact destination that you want to go to. You're going to be funneled through these airports, and you're going to be given additional screening at these airports because that's where the personnel who do such screening have congregated. So that's, I think, very helpful information on CBP's website about coming to the United States if you're coming especially from China, Iran, or one of the European countries listed in the last paragraph of this web page. Now that's at the borders, including the airports and the Canadian pre-clearances and the physical land borders. But what about people who are already in the United States and worried about immigration enforcement within the United States? For that, we have to go to ICE, otherwise known as Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is also part of the United States Department of Homeland Security. Now, ICE, when you first go to their page on guidance on COVID-19, which is not necessarily easy to find just by going to their website, you might want to Google it separately. You'll see that they have a lot of general information about precautions being taken. But then they also, if you scroll down farther, they also have some very good information about their enforcement practices during the crisis. So, for example, if you have to check in with ICE, if you have an appointment to check in with ICE, then they're saying you should contact the office where you're supposed to check in first for guidance before you actually just show up. That's very important. They also have information here about modifying their enforcement operations. So ICE ERO, which is the enforcement and removal operations part of ICE, will focus enforcement only on public safety risks and individuals subject to mandatory detention based on criminal grounds. For those individuals who do not fall into these categories, ERO will exercise discretion to delay enforcement actions until after the crisis or or other alternatives to detention are found as appropriate. Now, they also say when they made these updates. So it's very important to see what the most up-to-date information is. This is what's up here as of April 4th, 2020. ICE is very clear. They're not making arrests at hospitals. So if you need to go for emergency care to the hospital or otherwise told to go to the hospital and you're worried about being arrested there, Just know it's not going to be by ICE, which is very nice that they put that on there. They also are willing to accept their normal application for stay of deportation or removal, which is on Form I-246, which normally has to be filed in person. They're willing to accept that by mail, which is also very helpful. And then they also have extended by when people who are released at the southwest border have to check in. Usually it's 30 days, but they can check in within 60 days after release. And they also have information here about paying bonds and on taking care of detainees while in custody and how they screen those detainees. So if you want to get more information, go to ice.gov/coronavirus. Very easy website to remember. And they have a lot of helpful information, even though a lot of what's being reported in the media is not particularly detailed. Their website is very detailed. Moving along now. So we just finished with everything immigration related by the Department of Homeland Security, which is CIS, Citizenship and Immigration Services, ICE, or first we did CBP, which is Customs and Border Protection, and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. CIS handles the immigration benefits applications like naturalizations, adjustments of status, extensions of status or stay, and changes of status, TPS, asylum, and so forth. Then you have Customs and Border Protection. So that was CIS. Then you have Customs and Border Protection, which handles the airports and the land borders and the Canadian pre-clearances. And also there are pre-clearances in Ireland and UAE, where you can go through U.S. immigration on that side of your flight. And then, of course, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is the internal law enforcement part of ICE, and especially EOIR, that's the immigration-related part of enforcement of ICE, which is enforcement and removal operations. Now we go to the immigration court system, which is not governed by Homeland Security, but rather by the United States Department of Justice. The Immigration Court and the Board of Immigration Appeals are part of the Executive Office for Immigration Review, which on their website has a list of all their closures and activities for the immigration courts nationwide. Their website says very clearly that all non-detained hearings scheduled through May 1st, 2020 have been postponed. So if you have a hearing scheduled for April 2020, it's a non-detained matter, then it's going to be rescheduled. The same thing has happened with these the migrant protection protocol cases. They were trying to keep those going, but they just have not been able to maintain those. So those are being postponed too, even though those were fast track cases that were supposed to be expedited. Now, when it comes to detained matters, those proceedings are still moving forward. Now, if you look at some of these hearings, some of these hearing locations like Adelanto, which is close to Los Angeles, that's open. Now, if you go to Adelanto, they're not going to let you into the courthouse unless you're wearing PPE, personal protective equipment. They don't provide it to you. So unless you have your own, like goggles, a mask, and other protection, then you're not going to be able to attend a hearing. Most attorneys are appearing telephonically, and the court has been very liberal in granting motions for telephonic appearance, even without submitting a written request. So that's very important to understand. But even for certain detained facilities, they are closed, and it's day to day. They are closed certain days. So it's very important to have access to the second main stream of communication for EOIR, which is their Twitter feed. It's the modern era EOIR through the Department of Justice has been communicating with people through Twitter. They don't respond to direct messaging, but they do have basically the equivalent of updates to their website on their Twitter feed. So, for example, their Twitter they're called at DOJ EOIR. That's DOJ_EOIR. For example, the San Juan Immigration Court is not going to be open on Monday. And similarly, yesterday on Friday, April 3rd, the Boston Immigration Court, the Conroe Immigration Court, and the New Orleans Immigration Court were closed. So even us immigration attorneys use this Twitter feed to help us understand which courts are going to be open tomorrow or any business day, and it's been very helpful so far. So I'm glad that EOIR is doing that, but it's not always known to people to check their Twitter feed. So I'm telling people right now, you should check EOIR's Twitter feed if you have a case or are somehow dealing with the immigration courts. So that's the Department of Justice. So we finished with EOIR. Next, I want to talk about the Department of Labor. Now, the Department of Labor is involved in, their Office of Foreign Labor Certification is involved in a number of employment-based immigration categories. The main one I want to talk about, though, is the PERM. That is what needs to be filed with the Department of Labor before an I-140 or an employment-based immigrant petition can be filed. In most cases, there are certain exceptions, but in this scenario, what people usually do is they have a perm, which is the electronic labor certification application that's submitted online, and then if that gets certified, the Department of Labor mails the original to the employer or the attorney. And that original is what's needed because it's on a special kind of paper that's needed to be signed and then submitted with the I-140 that's filed with the USCIS. However, the Department of Labor, beginning March 25th, has made an exception, and this is right now up until June 30th. They are going to be issuing the certifications electronically to employers and their authorized attorneys or agents. And that will be sufficient. So the PDF that you get by email is going to be sufficient. If you're waiting for the original to come in the mail, it's not going to happen. Only in such situations where it cannot be received by email can an exception be made where it'll be sent to you by UPS. Otherwise, the electronic version can be printed out, signed, and sent with the I-140. That's very helpful, not only to the Department of Labor, which has reduced its staff at its offices, but also to individuals. Hopefully, by reducing physical mail, it'll also reduce exposure of the virus to anyone who's handling that mail or who has handled that mail. Okay, and the last agency I want to talk about was the Department of State, because the Department of State is responsible for conducting all the visa appointments worldwide at the various U.S. embassies and consular posts. Now, you might be hearing that all the embassies are closed, or people might be in certain countries where they're on complete lockdown. But it's very important that you go to the United States Department of State's website and try to navigate to the visa appointment wait times, because that will give you an idea as to how long, not only how long it's taking, but whether appointments are being given. So, for example, I typed in London, and you can see that emergency appointments only are being provided. So you have to have some kind of emergency, like your U.S. employer needs to have you working for them in the U.S. because, for example, you're an essential employee. So you have to get your documentation in order if you wanted to get that kind of emergency appointment. But some places you're not going to be able to get anything. So, for example, if I went to any consular post in India, you're going to see temporarily closed. If I went to Beijing, you're going to see they're open. You can get an appointment in 8 calendar days. So it's not always, I guess the term, I don't want to say logical, but it's not easy to know, or it's not necessarily intuitive as to which ones are open and which ones aren't. So, for example, we've been hearing in the news about Russia and how they're not saying that they have a lot of cases. So maybe I can get a visitor visa in Moscow to go to the U.S., but they're saying 300 calendar days for a visitor visa appointment, which basically to me means that you're not going to get an appointment. But if you were coming to the U.S. if you had to leave the United States to get a visa stamped into your passport and come back quickly, maybe you want to go to Tijuana. But they're offering emergency appointments only. So what else can I do? I can't go back to my home country. Maybe I'm from India and there's no embassy open there. What can I do? I don't want to fly back to China for safety reasons. Maybe I can go to Toronto, for example. And yeah, if it's a visitor visa, no. But if it's for like an H-1B or a student visa, yeah, I can get one fairly quickly. So it's very important to look as to what's going on with that particular post. And I would still even contact the post directly, especially if I'm a third country national, meaning I'm not from Canada, about whether or not that post is willing to take me for my visa appointment. That kind of specific inquiry is very important during this time in the COVID-19 crisis. So I wanted to thank you for listening. If you have any ideas as to what you want to hear about next, please feel free to contact me. Email is preferred, or you can even send me a message through my website. It's very easy. If you go to the Contact Us page, you can go ahead and fill in the form over here and send it, and it comes directly to me. And even if it's not about a specific immigration issue, particularly about you just want to tell me what you want to hear about, feel free to send it to me. I don't mind. I always love hearing the ideas. Stay tuned because I'll be posting my next video fairly quickly. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and know that there are people who are looking out for you during this time and that there are resources available to you. I don't want people to feel that they're alone, that their immigration situations might be complicated to them, but that and I don't want them to feel that there's really no way that they can get any type of help. So please feel free to reach out. There are law offices such as mine that are continue to be open and continue to operate and continue to make filings, to meet deadlines, to respond to notices. So just a little bit of work on your end can lead you in the right direction and get you the right result you're looking for. Thank you as always.